What about Dr. Carson? How would he fare in this segment of the media? And what's the right response that he should frame in terms of this Muslim for president issue? We'll talk to Zuhdi Jasser about that coming right up.
More Michael Medved.
And save on natural roller shades today. One of the finest patriots that I know, and I will not say one of the finest Muslim patriots that I know, though he is that. He's just one of the finest patriots altogether, is Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, who has served our country in the United States Navy. He is a physician. He is a strong conservative patriot. He is also the president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. And he's the author of a fine and necessary book called A Battle for the Soul of Islam. Zuhdi, it's great to speak with you again.
Thank you, Michael. It's always great to be with you. Thank you.
No, I know you're much in demand right now because of two controversies, one involving presidential frontrunner Donald Trump and one involving another front-running candidate, Ben Carson. Donald Trump, of course, said nothing to correct an individual who not only called President Obama a Muslim, which he is not, but also said that American Muslims are a problem in and of themselves and implied that we have to get rid of them. That's the language he used. And then Dr. Carson on Meet the Press said this in an interchange with Chuck Todd.
Should a president's faith matter? Should your faith matter to voters?
Well, I guess it depends on what that faith is. If it's inconsistent with the values and principles of America, then of course it should matter. But if it fits within the realm of America and consistent with the Constitution, no problem.
So do you believe that Islam is consistent with the Constitution?
No, I don't. I do not. I would not advocate that we put a Muslim in charge of this nation. I absolutely would not agree with that.
Okay, and then today he was speaking and somewhat, it appears, moderated his position. This is Dr. Ben Carson today.
I said I would support anyone, regardless of their background, if in fact they embrace American values and our Constitution and are willing to place that above their beliefs.
Dr. Jasser, how could Dr. Carson have handled this more effectively?
Yeah, it's just giving me whiplash to have now 6.5 years of a president that couldn't even mention the word Islamic when dealing with some of the world's worst, most vicious theocrats, when in fact we need reform. Now we're conflating now. Unfortunately, we've had candidates now with the courage to identify the problem, but when you overshoot, you're going to target the very people you need to reform the faith that I love. So he's conflating Islamism with Islam. He's conflating Islamists with Muslims. And, listen, our founding fathers were devout Christians, but they understood that the enemy was theocracy, was theocrats. So if there's anyone that can get this, it's Americans. So for a presidential candidate, as we see the world unraveling, and Michael, this is not a minor issue. I heard some pundits saying, it was sort of gotcha and there's no Muslims running. Wait, this is a major deal. The 21st century's biggest threat is where Islam is in its history today. There are Muslims fighting for liberty, and there are Muslims who are theocrats, be it the Muslim Brotherhood, the Wahhabis of Saudi Arabia, the Khomeinists of Iran, that are in the hundreds of millions that are threatening the world order, and we see refugees fleeing. They're coming to freedom. They're coming to our Statue of Liberty because there are Muslims that want neither secular dictatorship nor Islamism, and I hope our candidates can have a strategy of how to engage Muslims and take sides within the House of Islam. And if he conflates Islamism with Muslims, you're going to target the very people you need and alienate the very people you need to solve this problem.
Well, that's exactly the point that I've tried to make is, in other words, right now, today, this moment, there are Muslims who are fighting not only in the American military, but there are Muslims in the Iraqi military and in the Pakistani military and the Saudi military who are fighting against some of these extremist ISIS-aligned or al-Qaeda-aligned forces that we need to resist. We'll be right back with your calls for Dr. Zuhdi Jasser and try to talk about how it is that Republicans can appeal maybe more successfully to not only people here in this country who may be Muslim conservatives, but can appeal more successfully to Islamic people abroad whose help and alliance we desperately need to win what Dr. Jasser has called a battle for the soul of Islam. We'll be right back with your calls for Dr. Zuhdi Jasser.
1-800-955-1776. The Michael Medved Show.
Principles of Liberty. Find out how they managed to do that without taking a penny of money from the federal or state governments. Go to medvedforhillsdale.com. That's medvedforhillsdale.com. Speaking with Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, who has been a friend of this show for some years. He is the president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. So, Dr. Jasser, clearly, I don't think it helps Dr. Ben Carson to be speaking in the way that he is. I certainly don't think it helps Republicans to be debating whether or not a Muslim could serve as president of the United States successfully, or what kind of loyalty oath or what kind of rejection of his faith that Muslim president would have to make. What if you were sitting down with Dr. Carson right now and saying, Dr. Carson, this is the way you can put this behind you and move forward to talk about other issues, what would you advise him to say?
I'd say, Dr. Carson, you should articulate that certainly Muslims have a leadership problem, even domestically, let alone globally, be it autocrats, dictators, monarchs, and especially theocrats. Certainly Muslim organizations in America have a major leadership problem because of the influence of Muslim Brotherhood legacy groups. But we can't conflate the people, the grassroots Muslims, with their leadership. And unfortunately, I think in the tradition of Dr. Benjamin Rush, I think you should look to say, listen, Muslims, just like Dr. Rush and Thomas Paine wrote about the worst tyranny of all being religious tyranny, Muslims are in that same time of history, and there's no better allies and patriots as Americans than those. So I'd hope you would reach out and say that you would welcome into your campaign and welcome all Muslims who seek liberty and freedom, no different than our founding fathers. And that type of articulation would make it clear that anti-Islamist Muslims are not only our allies but our greatest assets. And I think that would put it behind him.
Yeah, and by the way, just to make clear, you're not suggesting that Benjamin Rush and Thomas Paine were Muslims.
Absolutely not, but they were devout Christians.
So Thomas Paine, not so much.
Yeah.
Benjamin Rush was. Thomas Paine had kind of a later in life he was an agnostic. But let us go to some of our callers. To Michael in Orlando, Florida. You're on the Michael Medved Show with Dr. Zuhdi Jasser.
Hey, I'm so glad talking to you. First, let me say how much I admire you and Zuhdi for speaking without rancor, your comments are great. You have no animosity. Well,
Thank you.
I met Zuhdi one time in Daytona Beach when he gave a talk. But I do think, even though I admire him greatly, I think he's wrong. I'll try to tell you why. I think I have, unfortunately or fortunately, have studied the Quran for about 8 years with a guy who had a PhD from Al-Azhar University. And one of the things in it, I think if you look at what the founder of Islam did and the Quran itself, I don't think it's reformable. For instance, they do not allow adoption. They say many times in the Quran, follow the example of Muhammad. Muhammad married his first cousin. Inbreeding, we know, is a problem in Denmark and Britain with the Muslim community. It says in there essentially, non-Muslims are allowed three choices: convert, die, or pay the jizya. And you could say that's misinterpreted, but...
Well, no. You're talking there about Islamic countries are under the caliphate. Dr. Jasser, you want to clarify?
Yeah, listen, I think we need to be careful, again, to put it in context of where Islam is in its 1,400-plus year history. It hasn't separated the concept and identity of the state, the theocratic state, from liberty, from ideas of reason, and the individual from the tribe. These all need to be reformed. There's no doubt about it. But the scripture itself says nothing about the mandate for a state. Yes, the Prophet Muhammad wore both the head as a messenger, the head of a military, and the head of state, and we need to separate those roles. But just like Muslims adapt to computer and medical science, we can adapt to modern political science. And I think these things can go through where we separate what a passage meant in history versus saying it no longer applies today. And it doesn't have to say that the Quran is problematic, but rather its interpretation is what needs to change.
Yeah, and one of the things, and it's sort of ironic that we're talking about this today, the Pope has just landed in the United States as his first visit ever to America. I have been deluged the last couple of days with anti-Catholic propaganda and people who say that, of course, President Obama is honoring this, quote, archpriest of Satan, and really sickening anti-Catholic stuff. It wasn't that long ago that there were serious people in a serious segment of American life that was profoundly anti-Catholic and had real questions when we elected our first Catholic president, which was 1960. Right?
Yes, and again, these things all get down to the core of a question of loyalty and other things, and that shouldn't be there, but B, if it is, we resolve that by separating our theology from our politics, from our citizenship oath, and that's never doubted for Catholics, and I think for Muslims, until we separate any allegiance to our personal Sharia from government, and we recognize and articulate to the American public that we do not believe in governmental Sharia, I can see where the question is, but we need to engage Muslims as a solution and not the problem.
Let's go quickly to Steve, Charlotte, North Carolina. Steve, you're on the Medved Show.
Oh, actually, I actually wanted to comment on Carly Fiorina.
Go, quickly.
Carly Fiorina, the media has got this love affair with Carly Fiorina that she's some type of Mother Teresa of politics. In reality, she's actually a vixen that actually, worked her way up the corporate ladder by manipulating what she had, which was her look. She divorced her first husband, Todd Bethlehem, after 7 years.
Okay.
Why isn't this information coming out, Michael? Why are we hearing about?
Because the same reason that we're not focused on Donald Trump's two previous marriages. I mean, really? You want to ask someone's ex-husband or ex-wife as a character witness? Chances are it's not going to be that favorable. And that's why not. We'll be right back on the Medved Show.
Portions of the Michael Medved Show are brought to you by the National Shooting Sports Foundation.
.com. Speaking with the one and only Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. He is president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Let's go directly to Mark in Thousand Oaks, California. Mark, you're on the Medved Show with Dr. Jasser.
Hey, Michael, by the way, your voice sounds perfect at this point.
Well, thank
really
you.
Come on.
Nice of you to say. Thanks.
Dr. Jasser, hello. I kind of wanted to follow up on an earlier caller who I thought made some great points, that Islam is not capable of reforming, certainly in the environment of a Western polytheism. And I guess my point is that
if Mark, can I ask you a question? If
Sure.
you really believe that, then what are you going to do with 1.4 billion, or some people say 1.6 billion Muslims on planet Earth? Liquidate them? What do you want to do?
I don't want to do anything with them. I just don't want them in this country, and I don't want them changing our country. They're welcome to go through a reformation or whatever they need to do.
Okay, but you said they can't reform. You said Islam is not capable of reform. That's where I have a problem with you.
No, you didn't listen to me correctly. I said it's not reformable in the environment of Western values in this country. I don't, and having read some of the Quran myself, probably about half of it, and I'm not an expert. I'd like to see Dr. Jasser spearhead possibly a movement that declares an apology or declares allegiance to the United States and issues some kind of apology.
Okay, Dr. Jasser, quick response.
Yeah, I mean, this is not going to be solved without America weighing in on this, because right now you see petro-Islam, the billionaires are dumping in money into apologetics, like you're saying. That's not feeding the problem. We're stuck in the 13th century as Muslims because there's no funding and fuel to counter Wahhabi global Islam. And this is the problem. Until America weighs in, and it's not just the $1.5 billion. You have Russia, China, other autocratic regimes that are fueling radical and political Islam because the threat to them also is liberty. So we have to, the world order is unraveling, and it's not just millions of refugees. These countries, if they get nuclear weaponized, and others will end up knocking on our doorstep, and the only solution is, as it was for our founding fathers, liberty against theocracy within the House of Islam.
Within the House of Islam, and certainly within the House of America. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, thank you for your clarity and for your courage. And let us hope that, yes, that Islam is reformable, that the Muslim Brotherhood version of Islam is not the only one that is on offer out there, because if it is, that would be extraordinarily bad news for this greatest nation on God's green earth.